Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Sue Rogan and I am with the Cash Campaign of Maryland. For those who do not know us, CASH stands for Creating Asset Savings and Hope. We are a nonprofit organization that works to build the financial well-being of individuals and families in Baltimore and across Maryland by providing programs and services such as our financial education webinar this afternoon. We are really excited to have Tisa Silver Canady with us today, who has created a tips and tools and information to help people understand what their options are and what are some of the concerns maybe for college for this fall of 2020 in light of the current health crisis. So I'm going to turn it over to Tisa and let her share her screen. If anyone has questions, please put them in the chat box. Please keep yourself on mute to reduce the noise and the background distractions. And I want to let you know also that we are streaming this on Facebook Live. So again, please feel free to let us know if you have questions by putting them in the chat box. I will get those to Tisa and we'll also curate the questions from the Facebook Live. So Tisa, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, great, Sue. Thank you for the introduction. All right, thank you everyone for joining us today for College Concerns, Navigating Fall 2020 in the Wake of COVID-19. I want to get through the agenda very quickly because I know we've only got a half hour and we've got 5 questions to answer. So just to tell you a little bit about College Concerns, you know, in mid-March, things just got kind of crazy and everything was shut down. And we had students who were on the verge of graduating. You have another set of students who are on the verge of making decisions about which college or career school to attend. And all of a sudden, COVID-19 comes and shuts everything down. So I started to hear from a lot of students, but mostly parents, wondering what they should do, if they should keep their decision the same, what to do if they lost money between last year and this year. And so I put together this quick guide for how to navigate fall 2020. And it just addresses 5 of the most common questions I've heard. And these are the 5 questions. The first one is, should you ask for more financial aid? The second question is for your student. Should your student take a gap year or perhaps a gap semester? Then the biggie, should I pay face-to-face tuition for distance education? If everything is online, is it still worth the same price? Fourth question is it time to rethink which school is your student's first choice? And the last question is, should you contribute less to your students' higher education costs? So after we take a look at some insights for these 5 questions, then we'll wrap things up with some closing thoughts, resources, and of course, my contact information. If we have time for questions, I can take them. All right, so let's jump into the first question. Should we ask for more financial aid? With all of these questions, I think it's important to look at the purpose first. When you ask for more financial aid, the purpose is for you to save money by obtaining more gift aid. I want to backtrack just a little bit to talk about the definition of financial aid, because when many people think of financial aid, they only think of the free forms. Those are the types of funds that don't have to be paid back, like scholarships, grants, or the federal work-study program, which requires students to work and get paid like a real job, but they're working usually on the college campus or nearby and getting paid for that work. Those are your types of free aid. They don't have to be repaid. But student loans are also a form of financial aid. So when you go back to ask for more financial aid, the preference, of course, is going to be the free kind, because you want more aid that you don't have to pay back. And when it comes to that free aid, which is also called gift aid sometimes, that kind of aid tends to be need-based. So the people who have the most need are usually entitled to more of the gift aid. With COVID-19 causing some people to be laid off or to have their hours cut, that means that income was reduced. And if your income has been reduced, this is something that you can report to the campus financial aid office, and it may increase the likelihood that your student will be eligible for additional gift aid. So what you need to do, the first thing is contact the campus financial aid office. So whichever school your student is going to, or if you've narrowed it down to a few, you want to go straight to the source. Contact that financial aid office and advise a financial aid counselor that your financial situation has changed. They may ask you how, just to determine if those changes may make you eligible to receive more gift aid. Now, each campus operates differently, even though all of their federal funds come from the federal government. So you want to ask them, what are the next steps that they recommend in order to document the fact that your income has changed and to determine if that change in your income makes your student eligible for more gift aid. And a quick story here, I want to tell you something to avoid. And I can tell you this from my experience having worked in a financial aid office. We had an incident where a student came in with a financial aid award letter from another school. And the student walked up to the front desk in our office and kind of tossed the letter to the person working the front desk and said, "Match this." You can't go into an office right now, and even if you could, I would strongly advise against this kind of behavior, because financial aid operates differently on different campuses. Second reason is it's just pretty rude, and three, that's not going to get you the kind of results that you want. So you want to go in with thoughtful questions. You want to go in asking about the process on that particular campus, and you want to let them know your situation and let them advise you the proper way to handle what's next. So don't do the match this thing. All right, let's move on to the next question. And that, should my student take a gap year or a gap semester? So the purpose of that gap year or a gap semester is just to take a temporary pause before enrolling in higher education. And for some people, that term gap is frightening, because they think that if the student takes a gap anything, then the student may not ever go back into higher education. They may begin to work and get comfortable making money and decide that they don't need to get that certificate or a degree in order to make a living. So I stress here that the gap year or the gap semester that we're talking about is going to be a temporary one, because we're just going to use that time to figure out what comes next and to make a more informed decision. So I've got some suggestions here for how you could use that time. And first is to explore the undecided. If you have a student who's still thinking about what they want to do with their life professionally, then they're probably wondering what they should major in, because the major should be linked to their career choice. So this is a time for them to do some research on careers. Ask people in their networks about different jobs and the educational requirements for those jobs, and to make a decision about what they want to do next. In addition to deciding a career and what major to pursue, they'll need to figure out if the proper course of higher education for them is a 4-year degree program, a 2-year degree, a certificate, or a trade. They could also use that time to work and earn some money, and hopefully save some of that money to put toward whatever institution they choose to go to toward higher education. But again, the thing here is this is temporary. This is temporarily pausing that decision to enroll in higher education so that your student can make a better decision and hopefully maximize those free sources of financial aid and save up for their own contribution. So when it comes to taking a gap year semester, your point of contact on the campus office is going to be the admissions office. You'd want to ask the admissions office if there is still an opportunity to defer admission. And for many campuses, the standard is to defer admission for 1 year, although some campuses do have spring admits when a student starts in the spring semester. I would advise you to be very careful with the gap semester, simply because certain courses are offered in a sequence and you have to take one course before you can go to the next level in that same discipline. Let's say we were looking at Math 101 and Math 102. They have to be taken in sequence. So if your student starts in the spring and Math 101 is not offered, then they have to take other courses and wait to the fall to take Math 101 and the following spring to take Math 102. So what you don't want to do is take a gap semester and then begin a semester late, because that could push your graduation date to be another semester out. And taking that gap semester could cause you to spend more money in the long run. So I'm not saying it's not possible. It could work, but you want to make sure that you take a look at the course sequence. You may have to reach out to someone in academic advising or look online for the school's course catalog to see if there is a sequence for the courses, and to make sure that all courses are offered at least once per semester. All right, let's move on to our next question. This is a hot button issue here. Should I pay face-to-face tuition for distance education? The purpose of thinking about this is because, everyone, I think, wants to pay a price that they feel reflects the value of the education that their student is going to receive. However, in this circumstance, it's difficult to figure that out. At this point, many colleges still haven't announced their plans for the fall. You have some who have decided, yes, we're going to go in person, but the semester is going to be condensed. It'll end before Thanksgiving. You have others who have said, you know what, we're scrapping the semester. Nobody's coming on campus. We're going to do everything in a distance just to be safe. So while those decisions are still kind of up in the air, there's some uncertainty around what the tuition charges will be. When you take a look at your semester bill, that's where you'll find the information about the tuition and fees. So chances are, if you have received a bill already, you were billed at the face-to-face rate, because when these rates were determined, no one thought the campuses would be closed and students wouldn't be able to come on campus to take their classes. So at this point in time, you might have to wait for a bit. Wait for your college to announce what their decision is going to be. And once that announcement is made, you're going to have a choice to make. If they announce the campus is opening, then you'll pay face-to-face for a face-to-face experience. But if they announce that the campus is going to remain closed, but the tuition rate stays the same, you have a choice to make. You have to decide if that rate is acceptable for you. I can say, looking at the face of it, you know that you're not going to get the same college experience at home as you would on campus. And the college experience, along with the college education, is factored into that tuition. So again, wait for your college to announce the decision. The information for tuition and fees comes from the bursar, or the student accounting office. So if you have questions about tuition and fees and charges, the bursar or the student accounting office will be your contact for that. But remember, it's totally your choice. When you think about that choice, one thing to remember, it's very important, is that financial aid is something that's determined on a student by student basis. Every student, if they want financial aid, should complete the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. And the aid package that that student is offered depends on the information that's included in the FAFSA. On the other hand, tuition and fees are determined by the institution. There is no student by student tuition rate. So when you think about getting a discounted rate because things are being offered online instead of in person, you can't just call up the campus and say, I want a discount just for me. If there's a discount that's going to be applied to tuition, or if tuition is going to be lowered, it's something that's usually going to take place across the board. So what I don't want you to do is call the bursar's office and ask for half off because things are online and not in person, okay? You can negotiate with financial aid, but tuition and fees, they don't work on that individual student by student basis. So be strategic with your contact to the office. Wait a little bit longer for your campus to make a decision, and then think about the value and if it makes sense to you to pay the same price for face-to-face and distance education. All right, our fourth question is it time for you to rethink which school is your student's first choice? Our purpose here is to look at the deciding factors. How did your student figure out that this school of their choice is their number one choice? And I want you to think about if those same factors that led to that pick being number one, if those factors still hold the same level of importance post COVID-19 entering the scene. So there are many ways that you could approach this, but I want you to try and talk to your student about those factors and perhaps group them into two categories, one being superficial, the other category being meaningful. And I know that there may be some areas of disagreement there in what a student thinks constitutes something that's superficial versus meaningful, but you can work your way through that. An example here of a superficial item to me would be a 24-hour gym on campus that has Olympic-style training facilities. On the other hand, something meaningful would be the opportunity to live on campus and in a safe environment. I'll backtrack to the 24-hour gym and Olympic-style training facilities to say, if your student is an athlete and looking to pursue a full scholarship or perhaps a career as a professional athlete, then that gym makes more of a difference. But for most people, that's something that's not a necessity that has to be provided by a college. So again, think about the things that are necessary for a meaningful, valuable college experience, and then kind of give less priority to the items that are superficial or items that could be satisfied somewhere else. If you are not sure about what makes a meaningful deciding factor, I would encourage you to visit collegenavigator.gov because they have a very good set of screening search criteria where you can look at schools that have specific missions, schools that are catered to a single gender, schools that are an HBCU. There are plenty of ways to, again, look at meaningful factors, like whether daytime classes and nighttime classes are offered, if distance education is the standard or an option. Plenty of ways to find meaningful factors there at collegenavigator.gov. And if you can do this with your student, it doesn't mean that the two of you will come down to ranking the same school as number one, but what it will do is give you greater insight to what's important to your student. And what you may be able to do is help them reshape what's important now that we're dealing with COVID-19 and the disruption of traditional on-campus education. And our last question, this one's a loaded one, and that's, should you contribute less to your students' higher education costs? The purpose for thinking about this question is to avoid overextending yourself financially and disrupting your students' college experience. I want to actually talk about the second part of that purpose first, and that's disrupting your students' college experience. COVID-19 has caused a disruption to basically every part of my life. I'm sure that it's caused the same thing for you all. And what I would not like to see is for you as a parent or guardian to make a decision to send your child somewhere that's perhaps their dream school, but it's just not fiscally responsible for you to do that. And then at the end of their first semester or their first year, they have to drop out and go somewhere else because you can no longer afford to send them there. So you have to think about this as a long-term decision. College or career school, it's a huge investment of time and of money. And I don't want people to get kind of caught up in the, overcompensating for what this high school class of 2020 has lost this year. I don't want you to get in the space of overcompensating for that loss by trying to give them the dream experience for college if you cannot finance that dream. So the process here for thinking about your contribution, first is to review the financial aid offers that you've received from all the schools that your student has been accepted to, and determine how much will you have to pay out of pocket. So remove all the gift aid, any scholarships, grants, work study. See what's left over for you to pay as a parent or guardian, either through a loan or out of pocket via maybe a cash payment plan that you can make with the bursar's office. And when you look at that dollar amount for each school, I want you to answer yourself honestly, is this an amount that you are comfortable with paying? If it's not, then you have to think about some alternatives. Think of some ways that you could close the gap, or is it even possible to close the gap? If it's not possible for you to close the gap, then your student probably needs to choose another school, because you don't want to send your household into further financial distress trying to get your student to a school that it may not be feasible for them to stay in once they are enrolled. So it's important to look at the amount that you were thinking about contributing before COVID-19 came, and think about if that amount is still feasible. If it's not, then it's totally reasonable for you as a parent or guardian to contribute less to your students' higher education costs. So some closing thoughts now that we've looked at those 5 questions. The first one is that I want to remind everyone, this is new territory for all parties involved. Just as your students have had their academic lives and social lives upended, so have the professionals that are working at these colleges and career schools. Financial aid, for instance, that was an area that I worked in where it was pretty much standard that you don't get to work from home because you deal with highly sensitive information. It's a customer service driven role. We need people to be on campus. But COVID-19 changed all that. So you have people who are used to being in the office all the time, now working from home and still trying to satisfy, I would argue, a higher level of demand as this season of making decisions about which school to go to, as we're kind of in the thick of it. So remember, just as you're experiencing a disruption and trying to figure out your new normal, they're trying to do the same thing. The second point I'd like to say, and this is a personal one, and that's safety first. As you think about where your student may go this fall, just remember that their safety is the primary concern. You have to be comfortable if a campus opens. You need to be comfortable with sending them to that campus and trusting that the school has done everything possible to ensure their safety. So keep their safety in mind, of course, as you make the decision. The next point is that the college choice is a matter of life and how. Having spoken to so many high school graduates and their families, sometimes it's hard for them not to look at this college decision in isolation. They're looking at it like this is, a life or death choice, and I don't want to get this wrong. The college choice is not a matter of life or death. It's life and how. Life will go on. You just got to make some choices about how that life is going to look, keeping this COVID-19 uncertainty in mind. And the last point is that worry and wellness cannot coexist. I know I've given you all a lot of food for thought financially, but I want you to remember the concept of financial wellness and having satisfaction and some level of comfort with the financial condition of your household. If you make a decision for your student to send them somewhere that you know your household cannot afford, you're going to set yourself up for a lot of worries. And if you're worrying about that college choice, chances are your student is probably going to worry about it too. And worry and wellness cannot coexist. I would not suggest sending your student on campus to adjust to a new kind of life. That's campus life, college life, COVID-19 life, and still be worried about finances. It's not going to bode well for that college experience, and it may actually cause them to be distracted from the academics at hand. So just remember that. You want to make a solid, feasible decision for their college or career school and how to pay for it. And that's not a decision that's going to leave you worrying or staying up late at night trying to figure out how you're going to pay for it. So just some food for thought to maintain perspective at this time when you have a major decision to make. As for the resources, we breezed through the questions today. The full guide of navigating fall 2020 in the wake of COVID-19 is available on my website at tisasilver.com/resources. It is free, but I do ask for your email address so that I can stay in touch from time to time. I promise not to bug you, but stay in touch from time to time to give you new free resources as I develop them. Also, some local resources. I want to direct you to the Cash Campaign of Maryland. There are plenty of resources there for financial education classes and also for building your personal budget. Before your student makes a decision, it's important for you to know what's coming into your household, what's flowing out of your household. And if you have a surplus, then you can decide what to do with it and how much of that you'd like to dedicate toward paying for your child's college or career school education. Also, I want you to take a look at mhec.maryland.gov because the state of Maryland has several programs to help students and their families pay for higher education. We focused a lot on the federal side of things very often. The federal application is the gateway to receiving state aid in most cases. So make sure that you complete your FAFSA. Take a look at Cash Campaign of Maryland for budgeting help and mhec.maryland.gov to get more information about programs to help pay for your students' education. If you'd like to contact me, I've got my social links here, Tisa Silver on just about everything, and Facebook, Dr. Tisa Silver Canady. And at this time, let's see if we have time left. We sure do. Sue, do we have any questions?
We do. Tisa, thank you so much for this helpful information. It's got to be so stressful for people to think through this situation right now. So we really appreciate your help in thinking through these different questions. A couple of the ones that we've had come up in the chat box is it a good idea to apply for gift money at the school you hope to attend?
Absolutely. Gift money is the kind of money that everybody wants more of. So the key for federal gift money would be to complete the FAFSA. And for many schools, they use the FAFSA to give out forms of gift aid that the school itself controls. So completing the FAFSA helps you in that it will let you know how much you're eligible for in federal aid, but the schools will also take your information from the FAFSA and look at the institutional funds that they have and decide based on that FAFSA who might receive gift money from the school. Another thing about gift money is that it comes in different pots. The federal government has some, the state has some, your school probably has some, organizations in your community that offer scholarships and gift aid as well. So cast a wide net, but make sure that you complete the FAFSA because for many schools, they use the information from the FAFSA to evaluate whether or not a student is eligible for gift aid that comes from the institution.
Great, thank you. And I know one thing that many people have used, and I did as well, is looking for scholarships that are available through social media posts or financial institutions. You know, get out there and start making it a job trying to find this free money that doesn't have to be paid back. So
exactly.
There's another question on, is there any idea about schools opening this fall? I know you touched on it, but do you have anything else to add?
So I'm going to suggest a resource to you. The Chronicle of Higher Education has a web page that's actually I think they keep a daily tab on what schools are considering doing this fall. And when I checked it the day before yesterday, 64% of the schools that were reporting to them were reporting that they were going to open for in-person classes this fall. And that shocked me, but that number is evolving daily. So if you go to the chronicleofhighereducation.com, I think I posted a link to that on my Facebook page, actually. If you visit there, you can click on that chart to see the percentage of schools who are, still making the decision going on campus or have already decided that they're going to go distance education for the fall. There's a searchable list. And I've looked at that list. There are some Maryland schools on that list who've already decided it's not to open in the fall because we're not sure that we can do this safely and effectively.
Gotcha. Thank you. Another question, you're having everybody think about if the school perhaps had been in the student's mind, in January, February, maybe this has changed due to maybe a change of income, in the family or even the student themselves. So if the student now says, you know what, I really don't think the school that I wanted to go to, and, we've got all this process going, is going to be affordable now. What are institutions doing as far as admissions at this point? Can they switch gears and apply to a different institution?
So some of the schools have deferred the admissions deadline because typically May 1st is decision day, but some of the schools were kind enough to say, you know what, these are unusual circumstances. So instead of leaving the deadline at May 1st, we're going to change it to June 1st. So June 1st is the deadline for many of the schools. I think it's important to remember that you can always change your mind. The only thing that you forfeit by changing your mind is potentially the seat deposit. For some schools, that may be a couple of $100, and I would not like to see anyone lose that money, but I would rather you lose that money and make a better decision for your household's comfort than to make a stretch or a leap to a college where your student can't afford it and you can't contribute what you originally thought you were going to be able to contribute, just so that you don't lose that seed deposit. But the important thing is to contact the admissions office for the school, because this is happening differently on every campus.
Gotcha. Thank you. We had one other question come in about whether, if you happen to know that Bowie State is opening or not.
I don't, and that's interesting because my office is on the campus of Bowie State University. So I'm waiting, just like you all are, to find out what's going to happen in the fall. I know many schools in Maryland have announced this summer. We already know it's distance education, but I'm still waiting to hear what's happening at Bowie State too.
Thank you. And then one last question just to think about is that if the school that the student has chosen is opening and going to be able to be on campus in person, but perhaps the student is like, I'm not comfortable given the situation in being on campus and being around people. I'm guessing or thinking, or what are your thoughts about them being able to find online education through that university until they feel comfortable being on campus?
So pay attention to the news that's coming from that university, because what some campuses are doing is like I don't want to call it a hybrid model, but so you can come in person or you can view everything online. Of course, the in-person classes are going to have far fewer seats available. They're being encouraged to host classes outdoors instead of indoors, and of course limit the number of people who are attending those courses. But I think that there's going to be leeway there, because just because a campus is open doesn't mean that every student is going to feel comfortable coming to that campus, living on that campus. And even if they do feel comfortable, both the coming to campus for the academic experience and living on campus are going to be totally different from what we've been used to before.
Thank you. Well, Tisa, thanks again for all this great information and the questions and the things to think through. Thank all of our attendees for coming and spending time with us today. Please reach out to Tisa to see these resources. Please check on Cash Academy. This webinar will be on Cash Academy beginning next week, along with the resource guide that Tisa has developed. Thank you for checking out Cash Academy webinars. To attend more of them, we have them coming every single week, new content, new information. So please check us out, and I really wish everybody would stay safe and stay healthy. And I'm going to close this out today.
Thanks, Sue. You all take care.